Agyeman-Duah, the prolific writer. Ivor, good evening. Welcome to the studio.
Oh, good
Thank
to
you very
see
much. It's a pleasure. Thank you for arranging that interview with Professor Soyinka last year. So what do you do these days, Ivor?
Well, I've been in Johannesburg for some time, where I've been visiting associate professor at the University of Johannesburg, and I also direct the Soyinka Foundation at the university. So it's been...
So you've been in
around.
academia?
Not really that. It's not a faculty position, but a visiting associate professorship, sort of.
Yeah.
But the main job is trying to build the literary infrastructure within the Southern Africa region, based in the University of Johannesburg.
So what's this book about? Tell us about this book, The Death of an Empire. What's it about?
It's about the decolonization process in Ghana and of Africa, of course. And it was written by Kwame Sana Poku-Jantua, who was a member of the All Africa Cabinet of that Nkrumah put up, and also served as his ambassador to France, to Brazil, and then at one point to the United Kingdom. He was also his first Minister of Agriculture and happened to be my uncle. Okay. We worked on the manuscript for years before he passed on. And when he passed on, I was in the country. But he had left a note that I should try and have it published. So it's been done in the United States, and the local edition has been done as well. And that is what...
So Mr. Jantua was putting this book together, calling it Death of an Empire.
Yeah.
So he's obviously an Nkrumahist. Obviously. Okay, so what was he saying about empire relating to Nkrumah?
No, he looked at the whole process of decolonization. He was also a witness participant in the process from the 1940s up to the 1960s. So he lived within that generation, which was very critical to our formation as a new nation. Yeah. As a minister, as a diplomat, as a journalist who was trained by Nkrumah to edit the Ashanti Sentinel, and as someone who was also put in a position of the national leader of the National Youth Wing of the CPP before he assumed these diplomatic postings. So he also was a good friend of Nkrumah, and the friendship was very deep to such an extent that he became an executor to Nkrumah's will along the line.
Oh, Nkrumah had a will?
Yeah, he did.
I see, that's interesting.
After the 1964 Commonwealth Conference.
He wrote a will?
He did, and Jantua was an executor. I understand at another point there were some problems with that, but at least that was the level of trust, and the friendship was based on.
That's interesting. So, what does he catalog in this book?
He looks at the generic history of this country from the 40s. And
on the right side of the screen is the book. That's how it looks like, Death of an Empire, with a beautiful photograph of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah Osage, for whose birthday we are celebrating on Thursday.
So it's a generic history of this country from the formation of the UGCC, the breakaway, the elections that subsequently were held. And then because he also lived into the Fourth Republic, there are reflections that he did as we entered the Fourth Republic. If you remember, he died 2011. So he had the opportunity to as well see some of the events that shaped the beginnings of the Fourth Republic.
When you look at the topic and you look at the focus, the topic is Death of an Empire, the focus seems to be on Nkrumah. Is he suggesting that there was something that Nkrumah was unable to achieve?
No, really. On the contrary, he looks at the era of Nkrumah's leadership after the end of decolonization, at least in the case of Ghana, when the empire was off and there was a new era, which was Nkrumah's leadership as prime minister, as president, and the events thereafter. That's from 66 right down to when he died.
And what does he say about his account? Does he pass any judgments? Does he draw any conclusions?
Of course
does he explain some of the outcomes?
Of course, he was a very loyal friend and somebody who, as a colleague as well, because they worked together on many issues. So definitely, it's a very positive view of Nkrumah's rule in Ghana and Africa. And because he was also a diplomat who worked in London, Jantua was also responsible for setting up the prototype of what became known as the Organization of African Unity. He was to work with the then 6 independent African countries that were in London. So it was after that conference on the directives of Nkrumah that the conference, the main one was organized in Accra, the All People's Conference, and after which the Organization of African Union was given birth to. So he was involved not only in the domestic public policy, but also was one of the pioneers during the formation of our diplomatic corps.
What did he write about the 1966 coup event?
Of course, he was very disappointed. He was then in London and had to come back to Accra because the government had been overthrown. He was working then with the Ghana High Commission in London. And once that happened, of course, you lose your standing as a diplomat. You had to pack. And there's an account in the book where he talks about being detained briefly at the airport because he was identified as one of them.
In the Accra airport?
The Accra airport. So after, briefly he was released. And then
what does he say about the PDA, which is one of the things that define Nkrumah, the successful struggle towards independence, the PDA, the economic revolution and transformation, and then the 1966 coup? What does he say about the PDA?
He thought the application was regrettable in some sense, but he also catalogued a series of events which might have instigated the promulgation of that. But at the end, he doesn't justify it to the extent that morally he will be able to defend. But he thought the events that led to PDA were as bad as the application of the law itself.
So he looked at the PDA as a reaction?
As a reaction to the many assassination attempts that Nkrumah suffered, both within and from without. Those that conspired from outside of borders, and those who were also working with those who were working from outside, sort of. Does
the book spare some words on Nkrumah's opponents, the UP people and all that?
Yeah, he was very critical with some of the Nkrumah's opponents, but he was also, in one or two instances, agreed with Dankwa against Nkrumah, and this is about one or two instances that you find in the book. Otherwise, it's a very positive portrait of Nkrumah. But he thought the symbol of the UGCC, when it was being founded, the arguments that Dankwa put up was more reasonable than what Nkrumah did. So on that score, I think he sided more with Dankwa. But it's a portrait of Nkrumah in a very positive light overall. So
when is it being launched? When are you launching it?
Thursday.
On Thursday at the castle.
At the castle, Christian.
I like the choice of the event venue. What went into that?
Well, we thought that Nkrumah started his career there. That place has served us well. At least many of the public policies that this country had to face life with had come from there. It was a colonial enclave, and then it became something else. Nkrumah used it as office, and we virtually had, I think the last person to use it was partly Professor Mills, J. Kofo and others, Liman, they were all used at one point or the other. So if we're looking back at the death of empire, and we're looking at decolonization and the consequences of decolonization, probably we thought starting from there and having a conversation at that beautiful garden will be ideal. So
what time is it?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. on Thursday at the castle.
Yes.
And who else is coming to the launch apart from you?
We have the Deputy Chair of the African Union, Ambassador Kwesi, and we also have Professor David Owusu-Ansah, who is at James Madison University and is an eminent historian on Africa. And we also have Ambassador Swanika, who was our last ambassador to France and UNESCO, and is the president of the Heritage and Cultural Society of Africa.
Okay, so the book will be launched there.
Do
you know how much it will be sold?
I'm not so sure how much the price the publishers will put on it.
Okay, where else would the book be after the launch?
I'm sure it will be in the major bookshops. It's published locally by Dege Books.
Okay.
So it should be in the local bookshops.
Okay. Okay. So you said it's already been launched in New York.
It's being published. The US and an European edition is being published by the African World Press in Trenton, New Jersey. And that should come out in the next couple of months.
Okay.
But the local edition is what we're launching now.
Okay, super. Thank you so much, Ivor.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then tell us what's happening with you in England on the 28th of October.
Well, I'm directing the conference, the 55th anniversary of the Makerere Conference, which took place in Kampala, Uganda, when African writers at the time, Adom-Otchere, Kofi Awono, Wole Soyinka, and others met and thought that they could change the world using literature. And they had all sorts of idealistic pastures. There were those who came from South Africa, Louis Nkosi, Dennis Brutus, and apartheid was also on the agenda. So they thought that literature, as produced by their generation, was what will bring glory to Africa. And it's seen as a very famous conference that defined modern African literature. And many of them are gone, because there are some few left. Ivor Agyeman-Duah attended. So in London on the 28th, in the School of Oriental and African Studies, where you also studied, Baroness Amos is hosting a memorial conference. And at this conference, an anthology that I edited, The Gods Who Send Us Gifts, which is short stories from some of the leading writers on the continent at the moment, will be launched. And that anthology is also dedicated to participants of that conference. So it's bringing together the survivors, Soyinka, Ngugi, and others. And probably something that probably to be the last time they will meet as a group, because they are now aged. And
so it's going to be what, fanfare, music, poetry?
There will be a bit of that. There will be some discussions on the consequences of that conference 55 years ago. And Baroness Amos will also host a dinner for the surviving participants. And I'm sure you're covering it.
I'll be there. I'll be there. It's Good Evening Ghana. I'll be there to bring the information. Thank you so much, Ivor. It's a pleasure talking to you.
And good to see you again. Good
to see you. It's the first time on this program. Thank you so much.
It's an interesting program.
How is President Kufuor doing these days?
Well, he's fine.
It's fine.
It's fine.
Okay. So that's Ivor Agyeman-Duah.